Tetra Pak East Africa, in partnership with the packaging producer responsibility organization PakPro, is set to begin a pilot project to recover used beverage cartons across the country. According to the Tetra Pak East Africa Managing Director Jonathan Kinisu, who was speaking at the launch ceremony today, the pilot project, which is set to run in the next 3 months, targets to recover 1,500 metric tons of used beverage cartons.
The purposes of this pilot and why we're here today, we are committing at least till the end of the year, that's the next 3 months, we want to collect 1,500 metric tons, that's our initial target, for the pilot. And this is going to inform us on what are the activities we need to do to scale up, what are the activities we need to do in terms of consumer awareness, what are the activities we need to do in terms of education of the people who are collecting the waste, the recyclers, what do we need to do in that entire value chain ecosystem. So the pilot is going to help us develop basically the infrastructure and the narrative of how we move forward.
So today for us this is a milestone because together with Ramani and Tetra Pak, we are actually demonstrating that we have the capacity as a country to be able to recycle used beverage cartons into a new product.
The project seeks to create value for post-consumer liquid board packaging that will increase economic opportunities for collectors and aggregators in the waste recovery sector.
Before today, not much of the used beverage cartons was being collected. A lot of the cartons were lying around in the dump sites, and the worst bit of it was a lot of it was being set ablaze. Okay, and so for us today, and in line with our mantra of thinking circular, is to be able to take that material and actually provide a livelihood to the waste collectors at the dump sites.
I have a major appeal to everyone to embrace recycled material, be it pencils, which is made of wood, and that's a tree cut to make this, while we can also use recycled material for school use. Then when it comes to even building classroom, which you can build very fast.
The recycling of the collected materials will not only create jobs across the country, but also provide alternatives for manufacturing basic materials, as Dr. Rugendo states it.
The boards can have so many uses. One, you can make school desks, you can make builders formwork when you're casting houses. You can also make a house like this one, whose cost is about 50% cheaper than the conventional stone building. Again, your building cost goes down drastically, and the time is in less than 3 weeks, you have a house of this size.
We're really, really excited to be here today to support ProPak, Ramani Recyclers, and Tetra Pak with this pilot project. The alternative building material that they've selected is highly sustainable, and the Kenya Green Building Society will be collaborating with the team to promote the technology as well as showcase it, do capacity building and awareness of the material to ensure that we can scale it. We think it's a great solution for housing.
The partnership brings together two recyclers of liquid board packaging, which are Ramani Warehouse based in Thika and Ecotech Limited based in Nairobi, where collectors and aggregators can sell recovered used beverage cartons. The project targets to recover 1,500 metric tons of used beverage cartons, which accounts for 30% of the produced liquid board packaging in the country.
Which was nominated for an award. Welcome, sir. So we can start maybe with, give us just a brief introduction to energy. What is energy? What do we need to know about energy?
Well, today we look at energy of basically providing the power for the ships, the planes, the space program, all the materials in our lives, and it's all grouped into the one word energy. And I think there's a totally misunderstanding of energy because it's got to be based on what you want. We have a lot of materials in our daily lives, and I think the thing that people do not recognize, they talk about energy and then they talk about coal and wind as energy. Well, coal and wind are not energy.
Okay.
Coal and wind only generate electricity, and they cannot generate electricity unless you can make the parts and components to make wind to generate electricity.
Right.
The basis that no one is really recognizing is crude oil is the basis of our materialistic society. If you go back, population of the world was like 1 billion people. Today, 200 years later, we are like 8 billion people. And that growth all occurred after the discovery of oil. It wasn't the discovery of oil, it was the technology that we were able to use, because oil by itself, crude oil by itself, is totally useless. It's black tar, it's dirty, and it's whatever. But if you can refine it into oil derivatives, the oil derivatives makes all the products in our daily lives. And the fuels that we can manufacture out of it for jets and planes and cars and trucks and space program, on and on and on. There are multiple different types of fuels that are used as energy, and they are basically allowing the society to grow from 1 to 8 billion people.
Right.
And like I say, everything's based on crude oil.
Right.
And if you take a look at it, generating electricity from wind, solar, nuclear, hydro, you can't do it without the materials and the components and the equipment to generate electricity. And all the materials are made with fossil fuels. All vehicles are made with fossil fuels.
Right, right.
We talk about transitioning to EVs. Well, EVs are 100% made with oil derivatives out of out of crude oil.
Right.
So crude oil is the one, everybody groups fossil fuels in one category, which includes coal, natural gas, and oil. But they're different. Coal can be used to generate electricity. Natural gas generates electricity. Oil was never used to generate electricity. Oil is only used to be manufactured in something that we can use somewhere.
Right.
And today we have 6,000 products in our daily lives that we didn't have 200 years ago.
Right, right, right.
We got 50,000 jets. We got 50,000 merchant ships. We got a space program.
Right.
They don't exist without the components that are made from crude oil.
Okay, right.
So crude oil is number one. You can get rid of coal, you can get rid of natural gas, but you can't get rid of oil, because oil is the basis of our lifestyle.
Right, right. So at this point, I need to ask you, the whole actually transition and moving away from fossil fuels, maybe even crude oil, is pegged on the idea of climate change, that man is causing activities that are changing the climate. So with respect to that, perhaps it's also important to understand, what is your perspective on climate change? Is there a climate crisis?
Climate has been changing ever since the world began. It's been changed for billions of years. Now, you have to understand where we're at today is we have a lifestyle. We've got 8 billion people on this earth. We have to maintain with food and medication and transportation. And everybody wants to get rid of fossil fuels. But when you New York, get rid of fossil fuels. What I see is get rid of crude oil. Now, if you get rid of crude oil, you ground all the airplanes, you ground you dock all the ships, you stop the space program, you get rid of all the hospitals, because hospitals didn't exist 200 years ago. And it's just a different lifestyle. So, climate is changing, and it's going to continue to change. Are we part of it? That's a choice we have to make. Because, like I say, if we get rid of crude oil, we're going to start limiting the supply of the products that we are now basing our lifestyle on. We're going to have less transportation available by planes and ships and trains and cars and trucks, and it's going to impact our lifestyle. Basically, if you get rid of crude oil, you can pretty much plan on getting rid of a couple billion people in this world, because they would be dying from starvation and malnutrition and weather-related deaths. And crude oil that's the only fossil fuel you really have to talk about.
Okay.
Can you live with it or without it?
Right, right. So then, if I hear you correctly, then perhaps you'd be open to the idea of gradually transitioning away from the fossil fuels but crude oil. Is that what I hear? That you'd be open to that?
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. Joyce, I'm 100% in favor of getting rid of crude oil, but there's no backup plan.
Right.
You get rid of crude oil, and right now we have nothing to replace it with. And like I say, our lifestyle is based on the products, our transportation, our mobility. If you go back a couple hundred years ago, humanity, because they had no access to good food, they very seldom, when they were born, they very seldom traveled 100 miles from where they were born. And the life longevity was like 40 years of age. Today it's like 80 plus, and you can travel anywhere, anytime. And it's, like I say, that's the lifestyle we have. If we don't want that lifestyle, then get rid of crude oil.
Right. So perhaps then I could ask, is there any existential threat that is facing the world today, from your perspective?
I think the threat to society today is the idea that they're going to eliminate crude oil because, Joyce, there's no backup plan.
Right.
Before you jump out of the airplane, you want a backup parachute, and there is no backup plan. I live here in California, and we're the fourth largest economy in the world. And back in '95, we were pretty much independent. There was a lot of oil production here, and a lot of oil production in Alaska, and we imported 5% of our oil from foreign countries. Today, because all the governors have been, reduce oil production. So today, California is more than 6% on oil from foreign countries. And we're being the fourth largest economy in the world. We're a national security risk for the entire country, being that dependent. And Governor Newsom, what does he want to do? He wants to reduce oil exploration so we can be more dependent on foreign countries. There's no backup plan. He wants to go to wind and solar and EVs. Well, Joyce, all the components that make wind turbines work, all the components that make solar work, all the pieces and parts of an EV vehicle are 100% made with the oil derivatives manufactured from crude oil.
Right.
If you get rid of crude oil, there'll be no EVs, there'll be no wind turbines, there'll be no solar panels. And so that's the question nobody wants to address. That's the elephant in the room that everybody's circling around. And they say, well, if you can get rid of fossil fuels. Hey, there is no fossil fuels. It's only one you have to talk about, crude oil. Without crude oil, you have no electrical generation from anything, even nuclear. All the components that generate power from nuclear, all the components, the electronics, et cetera, is made from fossil fuel derivatives. And our chat today is, via, Zoom and, iPads, and, they're all made with the oil derivatives from fossil fuels, from crude oil. Because you have to understand, electricity can charge your iPhone, but it can't make your iPhone. Electricity can make the defibrillator in the hospital work, but it can't make the defibrillator. And, if you ever, whenever you're flying, when I fly, I take a step back and look at that airplane. I say, whoa, you want to get this off the ground? And the same thing, if you're taking a cruise ship, they're as big as a hotel. You take a step back and say, you want this thing to move? And yeah, and like I say, the cruise ship itself, all the pieces and parts to make the cruise ship was made with the oil derivatives manufactured from crude oil. So, I mean, like I say, you can't look in your office, look in your office, your home, the hospital, try to identify something that was not made with the oil derivatives from crude oil. And today we have no substitute. So why would we want to jump out of the airplane without a parachute?
Right. So in short, what you're saying is that without oil, there's also no need for electricity. In short.
There is no electricity because remember, Joyce, the electric bulb came after oil was invented because the electrical bulb components are made from oil. Everything is made from oil.
Right.
And so, do we have climate change? Yes, we have climate change. We have to really focus on efficiency and conservation because, oil's around today. It's gotten us, within a couple hundred years. In fact, we got like 8 billion people on this earth. But be realistic, it's not going to be around for billions of years. So we don't want to waste it. We want to be very efficient, and conservative, but we want to make it last as long as we can, for our, future generations.
Right, right. So another question, is it possible to end then the use of fuel like diesel and petrol in our cars, but still enjoy the derivatives of oil, the crude oil? Is it possible to do that?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
Case closed. Because you can't make the automobiles, all the components are made with oil.
Right, right.
So if you get rid of oil, you can't make a vehicle.
Okay, okay. And what about the feasibility economics of it? The economics of doing that for the oil refineries and...
Well, the interesting thing about oil refineries is, like I say, as I mentioned before, oil is totally useless. It's just black tar. You got to basically refine it and get something out of it. Today, there's about 700 refineries throughout the world manufacturing all the oil derivatives and fuels for the different types of transportations that didn't exist a couple hundred years ago. And with all the pressure from government and policymakers and in longevity, because a lot of these refineries were built a long time ago and they're getting old and hard to maintain, very expensive to maintain. So of those 700 refineries, it's projected in the next 5 years, 20% are going to be shutting down. I know here in the United States, we used to have 135 refineries because we're one of the, the few wealthy countries that are using a lot of oil. And today that 135 is down to 129, coming down daily. But, losing 140 manufacturers of the oil derivatives that makes everything in our lifestyle, that's going to be devastating. I mean, there's going to be shortages and inflation in perpetuity. Now, I want to say there is good news. There are refineries being built. I want to say the bad news is the refineries are being built because Asia is building 88 new refineries. Here in the United States, being one of the wealthy countries in the world, we're becoming more and more dependent on someone else.
Right.
And like you say, if we shut down refineries here, well, they just, build them in Asia, and they have less environmental controls, less labor, laws, and so there'll be more emissions over there. Living here in California, we're probably the most regulated location in the world. If you want to build something that has potential of having emissions, you probably want to build it here, so it has the least amount of emissions. But closing your eyes and having it built over there, and the emissions, there's no control of emissions. That is, I think, not in the best interest of humanity.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ronald. So we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back.